my babies, hey my babies. So like a week or two ago, I had posted this thing about standing, what it means to stand, what you do while you're standing. Well, not what you do, because today is going to be about what you do, but how you stay focused while you're standing. So today, I want to give you guys some pointers on what to do while you're standing, because if you're standing, then you're standing the Christian way, which means you're doing things God's way. And the thing is, if you're doing things God's way, then you can't focus and look at what the world does. You have to focus on what God is saying and doing. And that means you have to spend a whole lot of going from group to group to group to group. Yes, being in the groups is beneficial, it's supportive. You know there's other people that are out there like you, but understand that your stand is a special stand, and God is calling you to stand for a reason. You're not going to know that reason until you're spending that time with God. That reason could be for your children, your grandchildren, for your mother, your father, your sister, anybody. You don't know. And it could be, and more than likely it is for your own marriage, but you have to understand that your marriage is a ministry in itself. So when your marriage is restored, obviously you're ministering to other people, because other people see that, oh, it can happen, it does happen, and God does move. But there are times when God does not restore a marriage, and he doesn't restore it for reasons. And if God is not restoring your marriage for reasons, sometimes it is because he's waiting on you to do something. It's very, very rare that God is not going to restore a marriage. When God doesn't restore a marriage, like I said, it's something that you didn't do. So don't get discouraged. Just say, okay, what can I do, God, for you to hear? Well, he hears you, but what can I do to be more honorable to you? And that's where what you do while you're standing is so crucial. When you are standing, the biggest thing that you have to do is pray, fast, meditate, and worship. Pray, fast, meditate, and worship. And you have to stand on faith. But the thing is, you can't stand on faith if you're not praying, fasting, reading, and worshiping. And if you don't know the word, if you're not studying the word. What I like to do is, if I get a scripture, there have been times when God will give me a scripture during prayer, and I'll go to that scripture and I'm like, okay, I think you're trying to tell me something. But then I have to look up different versions of that scripture so that I understand what he's saying to me. Then there are times when I have to actually look up words to see what they mean and how they are related into that scripture. I don't know these things that God tells me to do if I don't spend that time with him. I don't get scriptures that he gives me if I'm not talking to him, if I'm not meditating with him, and if I'm not giving him that opportunity to speak to me. So that's the biggest thing that you have to do while you're standing is, one, first and foremost, is make sure that you are reading, praying, worshiping, and fasting. Your faith doesn't get stronger unless you know how to activate it with the word. And that's just the truth. I know before I started standing, I used to pray. And that was it. I would pray. I didn't read the Bible. I just prayed. When I was in Florida, I did have a church that I was going to. But the thing was, I would listen to what my pastor was saying. And when I got out of church, that was it. I wasn't activating anything that my pastor was giving me. And when I prayed, I was just praying regular prayers. I wasn't praying a scripture. Things happen when you can say, God, your word says, I believe your word. Your faith gets stronger when you can say, oh, this happened to Ruth. This happened to David. This happened to Joseph. Or, God, you said that you told all the husbands to go home in Ezra. That's where your faith gets built up, because you know what the word says, and you know firsthand. You read it yourself. You're not taking somebody else's word. Somebody like me, you could tell me all day the sky is blue if you want to. I'm not going to believe the sky is blue until I go outside and see the sky is blue. And that's just the truth. Some of us are like that. We have to see it for ourselves. We have to read it for ourselves in order for us to understand it a lot better. And so you take this time to read, study, meditate. And it's studying every single thing. It just doesn't stop at reading the scripture and reading the Bible one chapter at a time. Yes, that is good. You need to read the Bible one chapter at a time. But once you read that one chapter, study that chapter. Study the people in that chapter. Study the characters in that chapter. Study what he's trying to say. Go to different pastors and read what he's saying, what their opinion is of that chapter, or what their opinion is of that scripture. And there may be something in there for you to see. There's nothing wrong with that. I tell y'all right now, Google is your best friend. Google is like a necessity. Google has anything and everything that you want and could possibly need. So there's no excuse not to know the word. So you have to take that time, break down the scriptures, break down the chapter, learn each character of each person, and study it. Ask yourself questions before you read the chapter. Ask yourself questions during the chapter. Ask yourself questions after the chapter. But it's imperative that you're reading and you're studying. It's imperative that you're fasting. Everybody can fast different ways. There's no one set way to fast. There's no one set way to anoint yourself. I personally, when I fast, I have a certain day, unless God says, I need you to fast for this certain amount of time, and then I do it. But when I fast, I anoint my head, I pray before I fast, and then I go into my fast. It's not something to be broadcasted about. It's just a fast that you're saying, God, I'm giving up this today, because if I give up this, I'm expecting you to put more into me. And it's normally when you're fasting and when you can go into your closet that he speaks to you even more clearer. So take that time to fast. Learn different ways to fast and figure out how you want to fast. If you've never fasted before, start small. Start with just admitting maybe one thing like chips or soda or coffee, and then move up to meat, or then move up to a complete dry fast. Whatever it is you want to do, or whatever it is you're called to do, because that's the other thing. Fast when God tells you to fast. Then it makes it a lot easier. So just learn how to do it. So what I said, you could fast, pray, read, study, meditate, and praise. Praising is imperative. Praise with praise worship, praise with us. I'll walk around my house a lot of times and just be saying thank you. While I'm waiting for my coffee to make, I'll just do circles from my kitchen to my living room, to my dining room, and I'll just walk around in circles. And I'll just be thankful, because I know that he's moving. I know that he's doing something. You've got to look at the glass as half full instead of half empty. That's my favorite saying to tell my kids, because they'll come home and they'll complain about this, that, and the third. And I'll say, but look at the glass as half full. What positive thing came out of that situation? I told a girl that she called me a couple weeks ago, and she says her husband spoke to her and he said XYZ. I said, that's a breakthrough. She said, wait a minute, that's a breakthrough? I said, yes, that's a breakthrough, because one, he's speaking, and if he's speaking, that means God's moving, and if God's moving, then that means the enemy's moving. So even though the enemy placed all negative things in his mouth to say and for you to hear, just know God's back there in the background moving. So that is absolutely positively a breakthrough. And that's my point. When you are dealing with situations while you are standing, regardless of what it may look like, it's a breakthrough. If he's being hostile, it's a breakthrough. He's ignoring you, it's a breakthrough. If he talks to you, it's a breakthrough. Because the enemy only moves when God is moving. So if your spouse that you are standing for is doing something absurd, that means the enemy is moving, because God is doing something else. So when you realize that the enemy is moving and God is doing something else, you take that time and get on your knees and you go back to praying even more and fasting anymore. But this is the time where you can learn all the different the different ways of how the enemy attacks, the different forms of the enemy. You can learn the different names of God. You can learn different prayers. You can learn about all the different spirits, because again, while you're standing, your stand is actually you going to war. And you can't go to war if you don't know your enemy, if you don't know the tactics. Yes, you can say a prayer here and there. Yes, he answers those prayers too. But when you really, really have to go to war, and mind you, if you're standing, that's what you're doing, you're going to war, you have to know the ins and out of the enemy. You have to know how the enemy attacks. So all this time that you have by yourself and you're worried about what God is doing on the other side, worry about what you're doing now to activate God and to move God faster. God, I need to know all your different names. I need to know how the enemy attacks by sound, by smell, by sight, by touch, by hearing. I need to know the different levels of the enemy. I need to know all the different evil spirits so I can recognize them and I can cast them out as soon as I see them. Like the Jezebel spirit is one, a lying spirit is another one, an adulterous spirit is another one. These are all different spirits that you could be casting out, that you can learn about, so when you recognize it, you can get rid of it. Because you have that authority. God gave you that authority to cast out demons and to cast out sin. So learn that and use it. Now, on a less serious side of getting closer to Christ while you're standing, take up journaling, writing, exercising, cleaning, a new business you wanted to start, a new hobby you wanted to start, something maybe might not spend enough time with family and friends or something. Use that time. Don't dawdle in what he's doing or she's doing on the other side. God's working on that. He got that. He don't need you. He just needs you to be ready. That's what he needs, for you to be ready. So in the meantime, you find different activities that you can do while you are waiting on God to do what he's going to do. And then that's, again, how you make yourself stronger, because you're passing the time away. Start reading more books. Start watching faith-based movies. I love those now. I love those. It's not the best acting, but God knows I love those movies, because sometimes we all need that little bit of oomph just to push us just a little bit further. So I'll read those. I'll read a book. Whatever the case is, I'll do that. So that way it's just a little bit easier for me. And it gives me a little bit of strength. So do that and encourage yourself when you feel like, God, the stand is so long. Because maybe you're standing just a little bit longer because you're not doing what God asked you to do right now. Maybe you need to stop thinking about you sometimes and think about somebody else. And I say that especially to the people that are in all these different groups. Yes, you're in a group. Yes, you're going through what you're going through. But sometimes take that time just to pray for them. Dedicate a week just to go to war on behalf of somebody in your group. Go to a nursing home or a hospital and volunteer your time. Do you know that those prayers for other people, going to spend time with the less fortunate, the homeless, or whoever, do you know those are all acts of faith? And those are admirable to God. He loves when you're doing things like that, when you're not thinking about yourself and you're thinking of other people. One thing in my group that I did just a couple days ago was what it meant to be saved. We'll say, oh, we're saved, but we're not acting saved. We're still not forgiving somebody. We're still bitter. We're still selfish. We're still inconsiderate. Those are all different ways of not acting like you're saved. So this is a good time to really know what it means to be saved. When you become saved, that means you recognize that it's no longer about you anymore. That it's about you, your children, your spouse, and everybody else, and you put them first. And I know everybody hates for you to be selfish. It's like, no, it's all about me. I need to think about me now. Do you think God thinks about him more than you? What about Jesus when he got up on that cross? When he got up on the cross, he was thinking about me, you, and everybody else. He did that for us. So this is a time where you can do for other people while you're standing. So in short, yes, I know the stands can sometimes be long, sometimes they're short, they can be tiresome, they can be gut-wrenching, they can be lonely. But while you're standing, take the time to get closer to God by praying, fasting, studying, and meditating. Pray for others. Really learn how you could change yourself for the better. Really learn how you could be more admirable to God.